Life is full of surprises. That's what people tell you, isn't it? They say it like it's a good thing, like a surprise party, or finding a $20 bill in an old coat. But they never tell you about the other kind of surprises, the kind that sneak up on you in the dead of night in a cheap motel room and shatter the very foundation of your world. That evening, sitting in a tiny, suffocatingly small room, alone with my stepson Gary, I thought I understood loneliness. I was wrong. Loneliness was just the overture. My husband Logan had been away on a long-term work assignment in another city for the last few months. His absence had stretched the fabric of our life so thin it was transparent. I missed him, sure, or at least I missed the idea of him. But it wasn't just about him not being physically around. It was the neglect. The phone calls where I could hear him typing his attention a million miles away. The way he'd forgotten our anniversary last month. It was a slow, creeping erosion of the soul. Those long, lonely nights were eating me alive. But how could I have possibly known that asking my stepson Gary to drive me to see my ailing father would end with us stuck here in this room? A tiny room with a single bed. I had no idea what was about to happen, but I'm going to tell you everything, every single detail. And trust me when I say this, the end of this story is going to be way more shocking than you expect. This is a journey into the heart of a secret, a story about what happens when the lines we draw for ourselves are washed away in a moment of weakness. What would you do if you were me? Think about it and let me know in the comments below. And before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on those notifications. You don't want to miss a second of this. That morning, the morning it all started, I caught a quick glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I saw the tension in the set of my jaw, the faint tired lines around my eyes. But beneath the exhaustion, I saw something else too. I still looked good. At 47, my body wasn't what it was at 27, but it was a woman's body full of curves and stories. Even with Logan leaving me so emotionally stranded, I still felt desirable. I still felt alive. But lately, even those feelings weren't enough. They were like a beautiful painting locked away in a dark room. What's the point if no one is there to see it? In the kitchen, Gary was finishing his breakfast, scrolling through his phone with the lazy confidence of a 22-year-old. He was home for the summer, before starting his final year of college, and the house, which had been so silent, was now filled with his restless energy. I came up behind him, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "You're starting your senior year at the end of the summer, I know, but your driving skills are still terrifying. Your dad was supposed to take me to see my father this weekend, but he's flaked as usual, so you're up. Come on, take me to Grandpa's." He looked up at me, that same cheeky, knowing grin on his face he always wore. Gary was a sweet kid, he always had been, with a quirky, funny side that could make me laugh even on my worst days. But he could be such a little troublemaker, always pushing boundaries, always teasing. "All right, stepmom," he said, drawing out the word in that way he knew drove me crazy, "but on one condition, you have to tell Dad to get me a better car for the summer. This one's a dinosaur." "We'll talk about it," I said sharply, grabbing my purse and rushing him off. Inside, though, a part of me was just thinking, let's just get this trip over with. The tension between us these last few months had been different. A playful banter that sometimes felt like it was teetering on the edge of something else. I had no clue that this ride, this trip, wasn't going to go as planned. We'd been driving for about 2 hours, leaving the city behind for the long, monotonous stretch of highway. I was in the passenger seat trying to read a book, but mostly just staring out the window. My thoughts a tangled mess of resentment towards Logan, and a strange, unidentifiable feeling about the young man sitting next to me. Gary hummed along to some random indie song on the radio, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel, and throwing out dumb jokes every now and then that only made him laugh. The car was old, a relic from Logan's own college days, and it smelled faintly of gasoline and old upholstery. Then all of a sudden, the humming of the engine was replaced by a horrible screeching sound, a violent hiss, and then silence. The car died, completely coasting to a dead stop on the shoulder of the highway. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice tight, with a surge of adrenaline and panic. "I think the dinosaur just went extinct," Gary muttered, trying to turn the key again. "Nothing." He slammed his hand on the steering wheel, his usual carefree demeanor vanishing, replaced by genuine annoyance. So there we were, stranded, in the middle of nowhere, a vast empty stretch of highway surrounded by sun-scorched fields. The signal on my phone was a single flickering bar. There wasn't a soul around to help. We spent the next 2 hours in the suffocating heat, arguing, bickering, and calling every mechanic we could find on a shoddy internet connection. Most didn't service this far out. One quoted a tow price that was more than the car was worth. Finally, as the sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, we had to accept the obvious. We weren't going anywhere tonight. The only option was a tiny, sad-looking motel we'd passed a few miles back, a flickering neon sign promising vacancy, and not much else. At the motel reception, a tired-looking man who looked like he hadn't smiled since the 90s checked us in. While Gary talked to him, I stood behind him, arms crossed, frustrated as hell. If Logan hears about this, he's going to lose it, I thought. The expense, the inconvenience, another thing for him to be annoyed with me about. But strangely in that moment, a rebellious, reckless part of me didn't feel like it mattered all that much. Deep down in a place I didn't dare to examine too closely, I just knew tonight was going to change things. And before this story gets even crazier, I need to ask for your support. If you are finding yourself caught up in this story, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on those notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. By the end of this, I'd love to see your thoughts poured into the comments and with those likes. The clerk slid a single key across the counter. Sorry, folks, only got one room left. Air conditioner's a little finicky, but she works. One bed. A beat of silence. I looked at Gary. He looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, before he masked it with a casual shrug. Guess we'll take it, he said to the clerk, his voice betraying none of the sudden electric tension that now filled the space between us. When we got to the room and Gary pushed open the door, all my lowest expectations crashed and burned. The space was tiny, barely big enough to turn around in. The one double bed took up most of the room, its bedspread a faded, questionable floral pattern. One nightstand, a dim, flickering overhead light that made everything look dingy and yellow. The ceiling felt low enough to touch the ancient window unit air conditioner wheezed and rattled, and the one small window just faced the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and disinfectant. "This is it," I muttered, my voice dripping with disappointment. Gary walked in behind me, dropping our bags on the floor and letting out a low whistle that was half laugh, half disbelief. "What did you expect, stepmom? The Ritz-Carlton." "It's just one night. Relax." That teasing tone again. That same infuriating, charming smirk. It drove me nuts, but at the same time it sparked something low and warm inside me that I couldn't explain. And even though I hated to admit it even to myself, the idea of being stuck here in this shabby, intimate little box alone with Gary tonight, it didn't seem all that bad. In fact, a secret, treacherous part of me was beginning to feel a sense of wild, terrifying anticipation. "This heat is killing me," I said, rubbing the back of my neck, the skin slick with sweat. I needed to shift the energy to create some distance. "I think I need a shower, or I'm seriously going to pass out." Sure, Gary said casually. He threw himself onto the bed landing with a soft thump and lying flat on his back, hands behind his head. "This is your kingdom, Carmen. Do whatever you need to feel at home." My name. He rarely used my actual name. It was always stepmom, usually with that teasing lilt. Hearing him say Carmen so easily, so naturally, sent a strange little jolt through me. I glanced at him for a second, taking in his lean but toned frame, the way his t-shirt stretched across his chest, the boyishness of his face mixed with the emerging angles of a man. It gave him a strange kind of charm, a potent combination of innocence and burgeoning masculinity. I quickly shook the thought out of my head. "He's Logan's son, for God's sake. Your stepson." I stepped into the tiny bathroom and shut the door behind me. For a long moment, I just stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My hair was stuck to my skin from the heat, my makeup had mostly melted off, but my eyes held a spark I hadn't seen in a long time. It was the look of a woman on the edge of something. Turning the shower on, I let the water run until it was lukewarm, and stepped under the weak stream, hoping it would wash away the messy, confusing tangle of emotions building up inside me. I'm 47 years old, I thought, letting the water run over my face. And Gary, he's not a kid anymore. He's 22, about to be a senior in college. And here we are. The thought, which should have been terrifying, was also exciting. A dangerous, thrilling current was running just beneath the surface of the whole situation. My mind flashed to Logan. Logan? I thought, a bitter taste filling my mouth. I wanted to surprise you. I wanted to drive up to see my sick father because you wouldn't. I wanted to try and pretend we were still a family. And now I'm here stuck in this roadside hellhole with your son, and I don't know how to feel about it. The steam from the shower filled the small bathroom, the heat relaxing my body even as my mind raced. Gary's grin, his easygoing nature, the way he'd looked at me when the clerk said, "one bed," it was sparking something unexpected, something reckless inside me. Standing under the stream of water, I couldn't tell what this spark might turn into, but I knew with a bone-deep certainty that something was changing between us. Later, after my shower, I decided I couldn't stay in that claustrophobic room. I needed to clear my head. I threw on a light, flowy summer dress I'd packed. It was perfect for the heat, but it also made me feel a little more feminine, a little more at ease with myself, as I tried to shake off the weird tension. The hotel restaurant was as simple and cozy as the rest of the place. I ordered a light salad and a large glass of chilled white wine, hoping it would help me relax. The sun had set, and the lonely streetlights outside the hotel were glowing softly in the twilight. Sitting there picking at my food, I couldn't stop my mind from wandering back to the room upstairs. I wondered what Gary was up to. Someone as restless and full of energy as him probably wasn't having much fun being cooped up in a cramped room. But somehow that relaxed, effortless attitude of his was driving me crazy in a way I couldn't quite explain. When my wine was gone, I gave my plate a final glance and made my way back upstairs, taking slow, deliberate steps, prolonging the inevitable return to that tiny charged space. When I reached the room, everything was unnaturally quiet. I turned the key, pushed the door open, and the sight that greeted me left me momentarily breathless. The room was lit only by the faint glow of the television. Gary had obviously taken a shower as well. His damp hair was clinging to his forehead. He was lying on top of the covers of the bed, completely knocked out, wearing only a loosely tied hotel robe. In his sleep, the robe had fallen half open, revealing most of his lean, fit body, the smooth expanse of his chest, the hard lines of his stomach. A faint, peaceful smile was on his lips, as if he was having a pleasant dream. My heart started pounding, a heavy, frantic thumping against my ribs. It was the last thing I expected to walk into. For a second I froze by the door, my hands still on the knob, unsure of what to do. Inside me a war was raging. A strange mix of potent, conflicting emotions. I felt embarrassed like an intruder, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. "Carmen, what the hell are you doing?" "That's Logan's son." "A boy?" I scolded myself internally, but my eyes betrayed me, drawn to the part of his robe that had slipped further open as he breathed, revealing the dark trail of hair below his navel. What I saw stirred something deep and warm and primal inside me. The small size of the room only made things worse. There wasn't another bed, there wasn't even a comfortable chair. It was either sleep on the floor or get into that bed next to him. And in this oppressive heat, the thought of the floor seemed impossible. I stepped into the room slowly, quietly shutting the door behind me. Gary's steady, rhythmic breathing filled the small space. I took a deep breath, trying to focus, trying to be rational, but the chaos inside me made it impossible to think straight. "Okay, Carmen," I muttered to myself, my voice a silent whisper in my own mind. "It's just one night. It's a practical problem. Nothing more. This doesn't mean anything. Be rational. Keep it together." I took a few tentative steps toward the bed and looked down at Gary. The innocent, peaceful expression on his sleeping face only made my already tangled thoughts even more complicated. I sat down on the very edge of the bed, as far from him as possible, wondering how in the world I was going to make it through the night. In the dead of night, a soft sound woke me up. I blinked my eyes, adjusting to the dim, flickering light of the TV. I barely opened them, just enough to scan the room. I noticed Gary shifting on the bed. He seemed half asleep, running his hands through his hair and scratching his head lightly. I found myself watching him through my eyelashes, pretending to still be drowsy, my body perfectly still. Inside, though, I was anything but calm. My senses were on high alert. Then I felt it. A shift in the energy of the room. I felt his eyes on me. My heart started racing, a wild, panicked bird trapped in my chest. He was watching me. I tried to keep up the act, maintaining the sleepy look on my face, but inside I was buzzing with a nervous electric energy. He untied the belt of his robe. As it loosened, the fabric slipped off his shoulders, revealing more of his toned young body in the faint moonlight filtering through the window. The way his muscles moved slightly with his motion sent a strange liquid warmth through me. I couldn't stop myself from watching. In that moment, I realized two things with terrifying clarity. I had absolutely no control over what was happening, and a significant part of me didn't even want to stop it. Gary pulled a pair of shorts out of his bag. While he was putting them on, he kept glancing back at me as if trying to figure out whether I was truly awake. His furtive looks only made me more excited. I was trying so hard not to give anything away, but at the same time, I was letting the moment completely take me over. After putting on his shorts, he didn't come back to bed. Instead, he sat down on the single rickety chair in the corner of the room and just started watching me. Being watched so intently was both deeply unsettling and stirred something indescribable deep inside my soul. I kept my eyes shut, my breathing, even pretending to be lost in sleep. But how long could I really keep up this act? The tension was a physical thing, a heavy blanket pressing down on me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I let out a soft sigh, as if stirring in my sleep, and then I sat up, pushing my hair out of my face. When my eyes met Gary's across the dark room, I made sure my voice didn't tremble. I let go of all pretense, all denial. Without hiding a single thing I was feeling, I said, my voice a low, husky whisper, "You're making me so excited, Gary." I could feel those words hang in the air between us, a stark and irreversible confession. At that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Gary's eyes flickered for a second, a brief flash of surprise, but it was quickly replaced by something else, a look of intense, smoldering relief. He took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice was low but steady, a stark contrast to the wild beating of my own heart. "I don't know, Carmen," he began, his eyes never leaving mine. "We've been under the same roof for a while now, ever since Dad's been away. The more time we spend together, the more I feel for you. You might not realize it, but sometimes I can't hide the admiration I have for you. Right now, this feels like some kind of dream." His words caught me completely off guard, but they also sent a thrill of validation through me. He wasn't looking away. His eyes held mine with a kind of raw honesty and passion that had me completely captivated. "I have to get up early to get the car fixed," he went on, though his voice sounded like he was trying to convince himself, trying to cling to one last piece of rationality. But his gaze didn't waver, not even a little. "But right now I can't take my eyes off you, Carmen. I've never felt this way about anyone before." My heart was a frantic, chaotic rhythm in my chest. In that moment, I moved from the edge of the bed, slid off the mattress, and sat down on the floor right in front of him so our faces were level. My eyes locked onto his. The energy between us was so intense it was practically buzzing, a tangible force that didn't need words. We sat there in silence for a moment before I puckered my lips slightly, fixing my eyes on his. "Gary," I said slowly, my voice carrying both curiosity and a direct challenge. "Are we talking about the same thing?" Gary's gaze deepened. It was clear he wanted to live this moment through feelings rather than words. He didn't reply, but the look in his eyes, the slight parting of his lips said it all. And that's when I realized there was no turning back for either of us. As I stared into his eyes, a surge of courage and an almost uncontrollable desire welled up inside me. The mixture of hesitation and raw passion in his eyes only pushed me further. Taking a deep breath, I started to speak again, my voice calm but firm, drawing his full, undivided attention. "When I came into the room earlier, you were asleep. Your robe was a little open, and I couldn't take my eyes off you. It got to me more than I ever expected. We can't run from these feelings, Gary. We both know that." As my words hung in the charged air, I took a step forward in our strange, silent negotiation and slowly stood up. His eyes followed my every move, his own breathing quickening. I couldn't hold back the excitement surging through me. My fingers reached for the sash on my thin summer dress, and as I slowly, deliberately untied it, I could hear the sharp intake of his breath with every move I made. "I think," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, "we need to even things out." I slowly unzipped the back of my dress. The fabric slipped off my shoulders and slid down my body in a soft silken heap at my feet. The cool, air-conditioned air brushing against my bare skin only made the heat inside me burn stronger. The look in his eyes said it all. Surprise, admiration, and a magnetic pull he couldn't possibly resist. The silence between us felt like a bond now, our breaths blending into each other without breaking eye contact. I took another step toward him. "Now," I said in a low voice, "we'll see if we're really talking about the same thing." Gary's eyes stayed locked on me, his expression steady and full of fire. Suddenly, he stood up from the chair. He never took his gaze off me as he walked over and turned on the small lamp on the nightstand. A soft, warm glow filled the room. Then he walked to the door and locked it, the soft click of the bolt echoing like a gunshot in the quiet room. My heart started racing. At that moment, it felt like the whole world had slowed down, leaving just the two of us in this small, illuminated bubble of time. When he took a step toward me, my breathing hitched. He seemed to be trying to read my eyes, but at the same time, he was fully aware of the silent, powerful pull between us. As he got closer, his hands found my waist, and the warmth of his touch felt like a powerful electric current running through my entire body. Without saying a word, he leaned in his eyes, dropping to my lips. I didn't object. I couldn't. Everything about this felt terrifyingly natural, like it was always meant to happen. When his lips finally met mine, all the tension, all the fear, all the loneliness inside me melted away. His kiss was slow at first, exploratory, but it carried an undeniable pent-up passion. My hands instinctively reached for his shoulders, feeling their strength and warmth surround me. The space between us completely disappeared as our breaths mingled, our bodies pressed together. That moment felt like an explosion of all the unspoken emotions that had been building between us for months. Gary's youth and restless energy collided with the deep well of passion I'd carried, ignored and dormant for years. It was the start of something. A beginning that was both profoundly wrong and exhilaratingly right. That night there was no hiding what we felt for each other anymore. I let myself fall back onto the bed, my body exhausted, but my mind racing, my breathing still uneven. My foot brushed against the fabric of my dress lying in a heap on the floor. I felt Gary's eyes on me, an intense and quiet energy radiating from his gaze. A moment later, he bent down and picked up the dress, his fingers lightly brushing over where my foot had been. Even that simple, accidental action sent a new spark through me. As he held the dress for a second, I could see a flicker of hesitation on his face, a brief, "What have we done?" a moment, but it was quickly replaced by a look of raw determination. He set the dress aside and his hands moved to the edge of the bed. Slowly, he climbed onto the mattress, his movements careful and deliberate. As he got closer to me, the expression on his face betrayed his feelings, equal parts nervous excitement and magnetic attraction. As I lay on the other side of the bed, I felt Gary's closeness, his body heat, the sheer energy coming off him. My heart continued to race, and my breathing deepened. When I saw him leaning towards me, I realized that the distance between us had almost completely disappeared. It was as if everything had reached a breaking point. There was no going back. I looked up at the water-stained ceiling and could see Gary's face hovering above me in my peripheral vision. I was fascinated by the way he was smoothing his damp hair back from his forehead with a slightly trembling hand. I could see in his eyes what he was feeling. His face was flushed, he was excited, and so happy. I could see that he was doing everything with a great unrestrained passion, and I was moved by the way he was out of breath, completely lost in the moment with me. My own emotions had accelerated to the point that a wild, unthinkable thought crossed my mind. I'm glad the car broke down. "I'll never forget this hotel," Gary said later, his voice trembling, and forced out each word as heavy as a sip of breath. His eyes were locked on me, but his hands were shaking slightly. His body was tense, his muscles contracting, each movement a little more careful and precise, as if he wanted to hold on to the memory to burn it into his mind. "I definitely don't want my father to sell the car anymore," he added, a half smile playing on his lips. After those sentences, he let himself fall next to me, closed his eyes without saying another word, and waited for his breathing to recover. I was exhausted, drained, and didn't even have the strength to speak. My legs wouldn't stop convulsing, a testament to the intensity of what had just passed between us. I don't even remember falling asleep. The next morning, I woke to the sun streaming through the grimy window. Gary was already gone. A note on the nightstand said he'd gone to meet the mechanic. An hour later, he returned with the car miraculously fixed. "We need to get on the road," he said, his voice carefully neutral, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "We have to pick up Dad from the airport and then head back to the city." Logan. The name hit me like a splash of ice water. As we packed our bags in a tense, awkward silence and got back on the road, I was filled with a dizzying cocktail of emotions. Regret, sharp and acidic, churned in my stomach. Guilt. Fear. But at the same time, an undeniable, thrilling excitement pulsed through my veins. I felt alive. As I looked over at Gary, at his hands on the steering wheel, at the line of his jaw, everything about him was affecting me in a new and powerful way. Everything was so complicated, yet I still didn't know what would happen next. I couldn't decide between the million questions racing in my mind and the thrilling excitement of the secret we now shared. There was only one thing I knew for sure. This journey, this breakdown, this one night in a cheap motel, was the moment everything changed. If you've made it this far, I know my story has captivated you. Don't miss out on what happens next. Hit that follow button, turn on notifications, and join us by leaving a comment about this story. I can't wait to hear your thoughts.